Now, today's guest on the Financial Planner Live podcast is Tony Fields. Tony is an ex-chartered financial planner turned performance coach. But what is a performance coach, and when do you need to engage with one? Is it when you're rock bottom, or is it when you're doing really, really well? But what can you do if you're somewhere in between? It is an open, honest conversation. Two guys chatting about mental health, mental fitness, and how to get better in life. I hope you enjoy the episode. Tony, thanks so much for joining me today on the Financial Planner Live podcast. How are you today?
I'm very good. Yeah, great to be here, Sam.
Fantastic. So, Tony, for those that don't know you, I know you as an ex-chartered financial planner, now a performance coach. Just give us a little bit of an insight in what you're doing in your life right now, who you're helping and why.
Yeah, look, it's great to be here. I help really ambitious people, actually. Quite a few financial planners because of my background, but also a lot of entrepreneurs beyond that. Often people at that kind of midpoint of their lives who deep down, a bit like I do and feel, want to become the best version of themselves. And that often spans across their business, but you know what? That also makes people reflect on themselves as maybe a father, as a partner. So yeah, that's what I do. And I also now get invited to speak at quite a lot of events, which are some financial events and some beyond, which I just really enjoy, particularly around kind of removing limitations, which is something I'm very passionate about.
Fantastic. Great stuff. So let's just go back in time, actually. Back to the Future, Michael J. Fox. How long were you a financial planner?
I was only a financial planner for about 12 months, actually. But
oh, right. Okay.
I joined the industry in 2001, became chartered in 2012. In the first part of my career, I was looking after financial planners, kind of business development, and then I kind of did quite a few senior roles, and also had a spell running a general insurance business where I had a financial planner in my team. So I've kind of always been probably 20 years kind of in the sector, in the profession. But 4 or 5 years ago, just stepped back, probably in line with the pandemic actually, and just reflected on what I really wanted for my career and took the leap and now doing what I'm doing today.
Fantastic. So, but why end up in performance coaching then? What was it about performance coaching that drew you in?
Yeah, good question. I've always loved performance. Do you know, sometimes when you just sort of step back, and if I'm honest, I hadn't stepped back. I've been on a treadmill all my career, like a lot of people, been pretty successful, but never really evaluated what I really want in life. And I remember at the time, we had number 4 child on the way, got 4 children, lots going on in our house. And I just remember looking back, and I was working with a coach at the time, actually, and just asked me some really simple but deep questions, one of which was, what do you really want, Tony? And honestly, that sounds so easy, but a lot of people cannot articulate that, and I could not articulate that. And I just kind of looked back. I'd played sport to a very high level, sort of semi-professional football. I'd always been kind of just one of those people that's obsessed with personal growth and development, and I read constantly. And I didn't think it could be a thing, actually. I didn't look there at the time and think I could create a business doing this, but it's very, very common in the States. And I thought, you know what, I want to create a business helping other people who are as ambitious as I am. But not just, I think the mistake I made in the past was my obsession with performance was an obsession. So I thought the only way you perform better, whether you're a financial planner or a business owner or you're just coming into any profession, was just by hard work, being desperate to succeed, and through real sheer grit. And that's what I'm going to use the word programmed to think and operate. And I was introduced to a different way of performing, where you perform more in a flow state and you genuinely tap into those, kind of reconnect with what matters and feel more fulfilled in the process. And actually, I think in sport, they often use the words, you enjoy the journey, you enjoy the process, rather than just the destination. So I think it was for me, it's something I've always loved. but it's about performing, and actually performing in all areas of your life, Sam, is what I'd say.
So what actually happens in a performance coaching session or meeting? How does it all work? Because lots of people have probably thought about getting a performance coach, right? Lots of people think about getting a counsellor, but they're kind of put off by the fact that they don't quite know what's actually going to happen during that process. What's going to be expected of them? Are they going to have to bear all? Are they going to cry? You know, what's the reality of a session when it comes to performance coaching? What's the process? What do you take them through, and why?
Yeah, look, again, good question. I would separate a counsellor from a coach to start with. A counsellor is exceptionally important for a lot of people. It's more backward looking and will deal with perhaps trauma from the past. And that's something, if you're thinking about doing it, I'd say do it for people listening. A coach, and certainly what I do, is forward looking. And it's looking forward from today. And if I was to say the start of that process, what I said before, what do you really want? Most people can't answer that. And when you take a step back off a treadmill and you're crystal clear with what you want to create as a business, the life you want to lead, how you want to show up at home, that emphasis maybe on your health and well-being that you've been putting off. So that's the start of a process. It's actually saying, look, where are you today and where would you love to be? And let's remove all feasibility. Because what most of us do is we have this voice in our head, sort of self-doubt, which will say, well, you can't put that down, Tony. You can't say that, Sam. You've never done that before. And it's not possible to work 20% less and grow double the size of your business. No, you can't put that down because that's out of reach. I say to people, remove limitations at this stage. It's about being clear with what you want. We're going to deal with the barriers and the obstacles in time. We're going to get into that. So that's kind of how it starts. But I would say it's not for everybody. It's not for it's not for the faint-hearted. It's for people who are committed and people who deep down just feel this desire. They don't want to look back in 20 years and say, if only I could have done more. So it's for people that are committed and open-minded. And genuinely want to improve. So, but that's, as I say, does that give you a flavour? That's the kind of start of the process.
Yeah, start the process, definitely. So if someone's thinking about using a performance coach, let's just get into the mindset of where they might be right now. See if we can get somebody identifying with perhaps why someone like you, a performance coach, would actually help them, okay? So you mentioned about having a clear picture, turning up and being the best father you can be, right? Being happy in your life, right? These are all things, I suppose, when we think about performance, we think, right, okay, if I can perform really, really well and everything's fantastic around me, I'm the best dad, I'm the fittest and healthiest I've ever been, I am earning the most money, working the less hours, driving the fastest car, got the nicest house, everything's perfect, right? Is that the type of person you're looking for? Are they at that stage where they are that perfect? Or we've got to get down to the crux of it, because people are going to be listening to this thinking, do I need a performance coach? And why? And I really want to kind of try to identify, if anyone's listening right now, that we'll get into the benefits of having a performance coach afterwards, but we want to identify with where someone might well be at right now.
Okay. So I certainly would say most people, perfectionist doesn't exist, right? It's good to strive, but that's just, most people do not start when they're doing perfectly. Most people start because there's a problem they want to solve. And for a high performer, that might be they want to, at the moment they're juggling and they're spinning too many plates and they're dropping some balls. And it might be that they're not spending enough quality time. Their business is being put ahead of everything else in their life, and their health is suffering or their relationships are suffering. So I would say there's a lot of people I work with that are successful, they're doing well, but they're feeling burnt out, or they've got an inability to switch off. They're responding to clients at all hours of the day, and that's very relevant in financial planning. They put everything, they put their client first, which is a great quality, but actually can be a problem for themselves. They're not putting themselves first. So that's a very common situation. There's others that want to grow quicker. So they're doing well and they've reached a plateau. They've maybe been either in financial planning for 5, 10 years, or running a business for a period of time, and they've just reached a plateau, and it can feel sometimes like something's missing. And they're sitting there thinking, do I listen to my head or do I listen to my heart? And my heart might be saying, go for it, Sam. Like, go for it. You can do more. But they've got that fear of, what happens if it doesn't work out for me? And the head's telling them, you're just fine. You're doing well on paper. And why change the status quo? So I would say that's two categories of people. Either those that are doing well but reached a plateau and can feel like something's missing, which is very common, particularly as you sort of turn 40 and you've got 20 years ahead and you're thinking, I want to be sure I'm investing my time and money in the right thing for me. Or people that are, again, doing really well externally, but there's just never feel like there's enough time. And they feel like that business can feel like a bit of a burden, and they don't feel in control. And so does that kind of paint a bit of a better picture?
Yeah, it does. I think one of the words you used before was obsessed. I'm typically somebody that can get quite obsessed by things. And sometimes an obsession's a good thing, right? I remember I was obsessed with the gym and I looked amazing. I was obsessed with running. I looked great. I was healthy. I was obsessed with not drinking. It had a massive impact on my life. You know, I went straight into like well-being and I ran down a rabbit hole of that. Other things I get obsessed with, believe it or not, are things like UFOs. Like I'll go on down a rabbit hole and learn everything about UAPs and what's going on and, you know, are they real or are they not? So sometimes my little obsessions can take me in all different places. And a lot of the time within work, I am obsessed with work. I am somebody that wakes up and I think about it all the time. I go to bed and I'm thinking about it. And if I was completely honest, sometimes I feel very exhausted from it, right? I feel very tired from it, like it's on my mind constantly. And it's great to have that deep obsession with something because I feel it can add value, right? Because it shows that you care and it shows that you want to do well. But I sometimes feel that sometimes misdirected ambition can be toxic. So you have this ambition within you, and then that ambition almost becomes toxic. And I felt myself at that point a little while back, actually. I actually spoke to you, and you helped me with that. Remember we sat down and you put a plan together, and you said, just write down, where are you going, Sam? What does Sam look like when he's 55 years old? What is he doing? And I'd never actually, honestly, done that. I just got up every day, got into autopilot, into that mode of like, I've got to do well, I've got to pay the bills, I've got to bring some business in, I've got to show everybody I'm a great social media person, I've got to get those numbers up, and that's all I ever think about. And it is exhausting and it is tiring, and it goes back to what you said earlier about being on the treadmill. And sometimes you've got to come off that treadmill to stop and reflect and get a bit more mindful about it. And do I ever give myself the space to actually truly think about my future? And when I think about my future, for some reason, it causes me a great deal of anxiety because the picture that I might have in my head of my future, I can't quite understand how I'm going to get there. So what I do instead is I put all my energy into work, just go like a treadmill over and over and over again, but without any clear-cut direction. Does that make sense? So there was that point when I reached out, when we started speaking, and you said to me, go away and write down what's important to you. What do you want out of life? Where do you see yourself at 55 years old? What does retirement look like to you? What does Sam want when he's that age? How much does he need? What will you be doing? And it was so reflective that I hadn't actually ever done it. And when I did
it's so common. Most of us haven't.
Yeah.
We just don't do things like that. Yeah.
But I think that's often to do, I don't know why, like why don't we take that time off to think about our future? Is it because we're so stressed in the everyday that we don't take that moment to stop? Or is it like an obsession, almost like an addiction to work, like an addiction to pleasing or addiction to getting results, or because that makes me feel good, but yet I keep doing it and actually over time it can make me feel worse? Does that make sense? It's like,
it does.
Bizarre.
I think it's subtly different for everybody, but I think if we just talk about obsession for a minute, I think obsession, whether that's exercise, you mentioned I used to go to the gym all the time, and that's kind of okay, but then life gets more tough when you then get older and you have a family and you have other things that are going on, and it's not as easy. And you that approach, you're kind of holding on to that. This is the way I used to be, and I want to go back to feeling as fit and healthy as I did 15 years ago. But you can't go to the gym for 2 hours a day. You just don't have the capacity to do those sort of things. So I think what being obsessive, most people can't turn it off. So I think dealing with that to start with, I think it's if you can be very laser focused and in a state of flow when you're at work, when you're looking after your clients, when you're thinking about where you want to go, when you're that is such a positive thing. That's like, I don't know, you watch Novak Djokovic on match point and he plays his best tennis. He thinks clearly under a real state of stress. But the challenge is I would say being content. Most people then cannot turn it off. They can't go home and suddenly go, oh, now family life. And now I'm fully present. And now I'm just going to park everything that's going on. So I think that's a big challenge that affects a lot of people. I think the second thing I was going to say was, where does this obsession come from? I think that having been in the profession for 20 years, I think we're surrounded by people, and it might be a boss that you worked for 10 years ago who used to send you messages at 5 a.m. and you just kind of have this wired into you that that's the way I succeed. And that, I don't know, for the younger people listening, that mentor financial planner in your business that you looked up to and they did it a certain way and you feel like that's the way you need to do it. And they're probably telling you need to do what I did 20 years ago. So I think we're in this bubble where everybody is working incredibly hard. And I believe most people have, and this can even date back further to your upbringing, and most people have this underlying belief at a subconscious level that I need to work incredibly hard to be successful. And if I do take time out today to think for 30 minutes, if I just decide I'm going to finish up at 4 o'clock and go to the park with my daughter, we have this guilt, which is not logical, but we have this guilt inside of us that says, I shouldn't be doing that because I'm going to not be providing. And maybe this is I don't know, I'm speaking as a man here. I'm sure it's not a challenge just for men, but kind of this thing that I'm supposed to be providing. And if I don't do that, then this is going to result in not the life I want to lead. So that is something that I know personally, it's one of my reasons for doing what I did. It's something I struggle with massively. And now having worked with so many people, it's a very common thing that affects a lot of people. But you unpick that and you unpick that underlying belief that you have to work incredibly hard. It's the only way to succeed. It takes time and practice and patience, but it's quite empowering actually. Does any of that make sense, Sam?
Yeah, 100%. I also did, following on, I want to make it clear that when I sat and had a conversation with you, it was at a point in time where I was really considering my life, basically. I was looking at it going what am I doing? Where am I going? Why am I doing this? I felt, and I hate using this word because it's it gets thrown around a lot. It's like ADHD, right? It gets thrown around a lot, but burnout is a word that gets thrown around a lot. And the people that have never really truly experienced what burnout actually feels like will say burnout's just stress. Everyone gets stressed, and it's really not. I had a proper burnout a few years back, and it was horrendous. It was bedridden type burnout. It was stress. It was anxiety, and the recovery time from it was months. And I genuinely was probably feeling the worst I've ever felt, and it revolved around work. It did revolve around work. And it worried me. Do you know what I mean? It genuinely worried me. So when I sat with you and I spoke to you, and I kind of just got over it. I dealt with it. I worked through it like I usually do. And I kind of just baby stepped myself back into it. But I never kind of gave up. And I'm very proud that I never gave up. And I'm very proud of the fact that I kept on going and pushed myself forward. And now all of a sudden I'm out here in Dubai, and I'm working here in Dubai, working for a great company. I've got loads of interesting work to do. Now, if I wouldn't have had that perseverance during that period and that bounce back ability, then I wouldn't be here today. And that shows that strength of character that you need. Sometimes you need to kind of pick yourself up off the floor, right? You're at the bottom of that well and you need to climb out of that well. Sometimes you might need someone to drop a rope down to help you, right? And you might climb up the rope, you might fall down again, up and down, but you will get out of the well if you keep going, yeah? But what I kind of definitely want people to understand if they listen to this podcast right now and they're feeling really, really stressed out, and it is around work, then there is such a thing as burnout. And I'm telling you there is, because I've experienced it. So there's no shame or guilt in admitting that you are burnt out and that you are coming home and you are worried and you're anxious and you're worried about money, or you're worried about what people think of you, or whether your business is going to stay afloat, or am I doing enough? All these emotions that are horrendous. So like guilt and shame, right? And self-persecution. However hard you try and you know that everyone around you is telling you you're worthy, you don't feel worthy. And it's like, where's the line? How do I know what the line is? And when you said the word obsession, it's kind of like, I am an obsessive type mind, right? And I have a tap in my brain and I can't turn it off. I really, really try, right? I do everything I possibly can. I've given up coffee now, and that's massively helped me, big time. You know, I give up alcohol, I exercise, I do all the things they tell me to do, but I'm still left with this part of my brain that doesn't switch off sometimes. I can get obsessed about something and I can just want to get into it and push forward. And then that feeling of like frustration that can come with it when you don't get what you want within the timescale that you want it. And I want to really, really get that across, because this is where I get confused. It's like, well, when do you get the performance coach? Do you get the performance coach? Do you tend to see people use a performance coach when they're top of their game and everything's great and they want to do more? Like, do you get people like that? Or do you get people that are like where I was, where it was like, shit. And one of the things that I had, as I need to get across, is like, just by sharing how I felt with you, and just by getting some guidance around how you thought about where you're actually going and what's enough, it made me realize I hadn't a clue. I actually genuinely hadn't a clue. And then from that, what escalated was that I built a plan. I built a proper financial plan that involved, you know, like over the next 12 years, what am I going to do? How much money am I going to need? Where do I want to live? What am I going to do with my property in the UK? If I'm staying in Dubai and I'm working for Hoxton Wealth and I want to see it all the way through, how much do I need to live here? Can I buy a place here? Am I thinking about? So all these ideas I had in my head of what I could do, you know, I could do this, I could do that. Instead of it just running around my head like a lunatic, I put it all into an actual plan. But with me, it takes talking and listening. So I have to have a conversation with somebody, and then I have to be able to visualize as well. I have to be able to visualize what that future looks like, and somebody has to help me visualize what it is. And then this is the bit where I tie it into financial planning, because Bobby Sohota, you know Bobby, right?
Yes.
And she does visualization, okay, which I love. And so I sat with her. We together visualized. You triggered me. I then went to her, visualized what it is that I wanted to do, and then she, within a day, put a financial plan in place that was completely realistic. And instantly, it was like a weight off my shoulders. I was like, oh, you know, I felt, oh my God, there is a plan, right? And the plan is actually achievable. And it did calm me down a bit, and it made me feel good, right? And that was a combination between, look, someone identifying you don't have a goal, someone identifying that you don't quite know what you're setting your target on, and your target keeps moving. You know, if you haven't got a fixed target, it can be quite, and for me, who jumps here, for there, and everywhere, it's tiring, right? It's tiring, mentally tiring. So do you see people like me a lot, or do you see people that are like top of the game and they just want to go that little bit further and they've got it all together? Do people who are performing at a good level, do they have it together? Is it a myth, or like what's the crack?
It's definitely a myth. I mean, to answer your question, I'll be honest and say I don't tend to work with people who are at rock bottom. Now, I think I have been in, like you have actually, in some very difficult spots, which people would never realise. I remember running a business, my first business 5 years ago, and sitting in an office and just not wanting to go home. I was not coping with my kids. I had 3 now, and I thought I want to be a good dad, and I just was like so far away from what I wanted. And I just couldn't even face putting them to sleep. So I would just say I'm busy, stay in the office. I wasn't actually that busy, and I didn't want to go home. I'd just escape. Then I'd go for a drink with some mates, so I was just trying to escape. So I've been through some quite challenging periods, and I would say if people are at rock bottom, I mean, I'm a massive advocate of men's mental health. I host an annual charity golf day for men's mental health. I've raised a lot of money last year. I would say talk to someone, a mate, check in 100%. It's just so important. People are going through stuff you'd never realise, who outwardly often can be the life and soul. But I would say they don't tend to engage with a performance coach at that point. I would say people tend to have come through the other side. So you mentioned bounce back ability. A lot of people I work with they're on that way up. They are doing very well. They haven't got it all together. Nobody's got it all together, I can assure you.
Yeah.
They might be achieving some fantastic results and the problems are a bit bigger, but that can be mentally draining. The challenges are bigger. They're making bigger decisions. It weighs more heavy on them. Feel like they've got more responsibility for their family. Maybe they've got a huge mortgage. But I tend to work with people either who are performing very well now, and a bit like in sport, they will look at things and say, I want to improve.
Yeah.
They're actively thinking, I want to improve. In professional sport, they use performance coaches, they use mindset experts, they want to get that extra 1%. No different in business, all right? Or people on the way up who've been through often a challenging trigger. So they've been through a moment, a bit like I did. I went through a period and thought, you know what? Fourth child's coming along now. We were pregnant with fourth, and I thought, I want to be a better dad. I don't want to be like I was for the first few years of the others. And I was noticing my eldest, Joseph, was getting anxiety. And it's hard to say it, but I knew it was triggered from me. And I said to myself, I've got to change this. So I was so committed to becoming the best version of myself. I didn't have it all figured out, still don't.
No.
But I'd probably say that's where the place you were at, Sam. You kind of turned a corner and thought, you know what? I want to go places. I haven't got all the answers, and I want to. Fundamentally, people say to me, I want to fast track. So I'm for people who it's interesting. A lot of clients who've worked with me say I've ended up achieving my goals in half the time I expected. That tends to be what happens because you have that clear picture, and then it's about. It's really one thing I'll mention. It's about productivity. Like if when you've got your head down and you start your day looking at your emails and responding to client queries and just getting into your day job, you can't see things clearly. You can't see obvious things that you can change, that leverage your value more, the tasks that you should be doing, the stuff you should be delegating, the efficiencies that you can implement. So it becomes a lot clearer. And then there's I say to people, 6 weeks clarity, 6 months results. And that's not just clarity where you're going, that's clarity on the areas where you're holding yourself back. And then it's a bit like a hockey stick. I don't say to people, expect the miracle. No, it's not perfect. Nothing's perfect. It's hard. A lot of people say it's challenging because you're going to have to confront some stuff. But you then experience like those little, like investing, compound interest. It's those compound improvements. And that's a lot.
What you do get is sometimes things are presented to you quickly. So just by sitting down and engaging with somebody, something very profound and very quick can happen that can have a massively positive impact on your life. And then the rest of it will come, but it takes time. So it's like you get this amazing epiphany. Oh, I've got it. I've nailed it. Brilliant. I get it. It's a bit like when people go to a counsellor or they go to a performance coach. They have the first meeting and they're like, ping, I've nailed it. I totally get it. I've worked out what it was that was holding me back. Thank you so much. That's because that has kind of almost come because you've expressed how you feel and someone's given you an answer that you probably haven't seen. It's like a wow moment. Yeah. And I think what I've found with self-development, personal development, okay? And I love the fact that we just talked about the whole distinction between performance coach and somebody that's perhaps experiencing a mental health problem, right? And need that support. Everybody's different. So I said Bobby, right? Bobby's the financial planner. You're the performance coach. I've got somebody that I talk to when it comes to like addiction. I've got somebody that I talk to when it comes to mental health. I've got somebody when I talk to in work. Like Chris Ball is now one of those people that I would talk to. So I've got all these different people. My community of individuals that are, say, experts within specific areas of my overall well-being. Or overall life that I have a good relationship with that I can go to that can help me perform that little bit better or get over those little hurdles. But each one within their lane is an expert. And that was what I wanted to make sure. People weren't listening to this thinking like, I'll get a performance coach because I feel like shit. It's like, it's not the right time to get a performance coach. You might be a bit stressed. You might be a bit overwhelmed. You might be but you're doing well. And you're thinking to yourself, why am I still feeling this way when I'm doing really, really well? That's an opportunity to sit down with a performance coach because you can start to look at things and go, are you working to the best of your ability? Are you being smart with how you're working? and I like that. I like the way that each individual person can help in different ways. And I can see now where a performance coach sits. I never really understood it, if I'm completely honest with you. So
I don't think a lot of people do. So it's actually a good conversation. And I was listening to a video the other day, and it's a Simon Sinek video. And
I like Simon Sinek.
Yeah, some of his video. This is 1 minute long, and I'll share it because I think it sums up things really nicely. He told this story of these two lumberjacks. All right, just hear me out. It's very quick. And these two guys chopping wood every day, and they're both chopping wood, and they both start at the same time and finish at the same time. And he kind of goes through this story and says there was one of these guys that was actually every day was going off for an hour, and he'd take some time out and he'd go off for an hour. But the actual other guy who was working harder was actually chopping less wood every day. And he started to get frustrated because he was sort of saying, why is this? I'm working harder. I kind of never take time off. I'm actually working harder every day. And yet this other guy is doing better than me. So he eventually asked the question, what on earth have you been doing? I don't understand. And the guy said, well, every single day I go back home and I sharpen my axe. And that's what I do. And it helps me with my performance. And I guess it's an analogy I quite like. I mean, it's a very good video, worth a listen. But when someone takes time out, let's say every 2 weeks, to focus on themselves, and one, it can feel quite cathartic, but also it's that just bigger picture. You're looking at the bigger picture. You're making sure you're committing to actions that are aligned with your purpose and what your goals and where you're headed. You also look at improvements that you can make that you probably missed. And then, frankly, the last bit, which is critical as well, is the accountability. You then, and whether it's a coach or a coach, or whether it's a colleague or someone in your business, or even a friend who's got a real growth mindset, that physical thing of saying, this is what I'm going to do, I commit to doing between now and next time we're reconnecting in a fortnight. And you make that commitment. It's a bit like a personal trainer at the gym. You go, you don't make an excuse. You go to the gym, and when you get there, you just do more. It's just what happens. So it's human nature. We don't want to let people down. So people often, even if it's the day before they're seeing me, they just do a bunch of actions that they've been planning, and they feel better for it. And that compound effect makes quite a big difference.
I also think, though, you said about a friend, a family. I think throughout my history, my 44 years nearly of life, whenever I've turned to a friend or family, it's harder than turning to a stranger. So if I go and see somebody that I don't know on a personal level, I find that I'm way more honest and way quicker at getting to the root cause of what my problem actually is and being honest, basically. It's a hell of a lot easier being honest with a stranger. Like, when I sit down and I can be honest with a stranger, when you're sat down trying to be honest with your boss, or you're trying to sit down and be honest with your partner, it can be difficult. And everybody's then got their own kind of agenda as well that are close by you. They might love you deeply, or they might want you to work really hard and not stop and think because you're doing really well. It's tricky to go to people that know you often, which is another reason why I see the value in stepping outside. So if it is a work-related performance, right? Yeah, it's definitely worthwhile stepping outside of your arena, because how can you be completely and utterly honest all the time within your work arena? It's hard because there's agendas left, right and centre, and I don't think you can really truly be honest within your business. I think it's really, really hard. Whether you're the boss or whether you're an employee, it's really, really tough. And I've been on both sides of it. So I think it's important when you think about it, it goes back to what you said, stopping and getting off the conveyor belt. And then by engaging with somebody else, you're changing the environment, you're changing the perspective. Because also it kind of works in the other way around, doesn't it? Because that person that you're actually engaging with has got no vested interest in you. They'll just turn around and say, look, I'm going to put a plan together. This is the plan, and this is what we're going to hope to achieve within it. It's going to take 8 weeks to get there. And if you wanted to continue on, you can continue on. But this is how it works. This is the exchange. This is how much it costs. And if you want to work on yourself, then you'll do it. And it's kind of like, fuck, yeah, all right then. Like, this sounds a good deal. And then because you're paying for it, you're also kind of like, oh God, I've got to do it. It's a bit like that with personal training, right? If someone just helps you out, if your mate's a personal trainer and say, oh, mate, go on then, put a little plan together for me and all of this, it never works. go and pay a personal trainer 40 quid a week, right, for a couple of sessions, you're going to turn up. You're going to start counting your calories because you're paying money towards your goal. And that dude is also going to hold you accountable because he wants to continue to hold you accountable because he wants to see progress and change, right? Whereas if you're having a go at it, it doesn't quite work. So
I think it's a really good point, actually. There's quite a lot of evidence around this, actually, that if you work with a third party, could be a coach, could be a mentor, an expert, and that doesn't always need to be a performance expert. That might be, for some people, that might be you've got a specific plan, I don't know, to exit a business, and you might work with an expert that's exited a business before, or you might work with someone who's specific expert in, I don't know, a lifestyle business or a lifestyle. So it doesn't always need to be a performance coach, but if you have that it needs to be someone who you deeply trust.
Yeah. Someone
who you trust, someone who has either solved a problem that you want to solve for themselves or a lot of other people, ideally both, actually. But there's a lot of evidence if you do seek expert help from one of those individuals and then make yourself accountable, the improvement in performance is exponential. It's a good start to, I guess, if somebody listening to this is not making themselves accountable to anybody right now, I'd say you might have a supportive partner at home who genuinely has your best interests and wants to encourage you, not tell you to get fitter, but encourage you to get fitter. Well, confiding in them and making yourself accountable is a good first step. It's not the best route, but it's just, some of this stuff is about getting started.
Yeah,
the hardest thing to get started.
I say, in those situations, because like especially when it comes to fitness, right? Let's say your partner isn't either that fit, they might turn around and say, "No, but I love you the way you are. You know, you do look great." And it's like sometimes it's not what you want to hear. Sometimes you want to hear someone turn around and say, "Do you know what? You've put on too much weight, you know, and you're not as fit as you were. And have you thought about why?" And he kind of like, well, yeah, well, thank you. Well, that's what I wanted to hear. Hit me with some hard truths. And I love the hard truths. Yeah. And I always say, like, I find like the best change I've ever had in my life is when I engage with a man. So if I engage with a guy, whether it's a coach, whether it's through my 12 steps that I did, I had a male mentor through that, and different types of male mentors I had along the way. This isn't anything against women, because I met some amazing women in my time, right? But I seem to change more when I engage with a guy. And I don't know, maybe it's because my dad wasn't that kind of great a mentor for me, and I'm always seeking male approval, maybe. And I've always struggled to have lots of male friends. So maybe I'm not as honest as I should be with men. I've always been really honest with women. So I've always had a lot of females around me because I get on really well with my mum. Right, you know, and then when I stopped and I was like, I need to kind of start actually being honest with a man and like talking to a man about things. And the more I started leaning into that and understanding the impact that can have on you as a male, which is why there are now male groups like Talk Club, for instance, the one that I was part of. Yeah, that was so powerful to sit around and just share openly with other men and to see the impact it had on their lives when they heard my story of recovery or whatever. It was powerful, but it wouldn't have been the same if it was just female. Now, my wife goes to events where it's just women. So women's groups and women's circles, and they call them the red tent. Now, she'd have never experienced the level of honesty, right, that she had to go to, that she really had to go to. She would never have been able to say that in front of men. She would have only ever been able to say that in front of women. You know, and she couldn't, some of the things she was told within that tent, she couldn't tell me. So it goes back to that. Go and find the expert within that specific area. Go and find that tribe that you can join. If you're not sure about going one-on-one, go into a tribe of people, go into a group of people. Because group is also massively powerful, because that ability to walk into a room where you've got 8 people that are experiencing the same problem as you, and you all sit there and open up honestly and talk honestly. Now, I've experienced this with my alcohol, right? I walked into AA, right? I didn't want to walk into AA. What a God, you can imagine like how much shame you feel, how guilt you feel, right? You feel like you're bottom of the barrel. When you picture AA, as everyone sat around smoking fags, looking miserable as hell, right? I walked in this place and I sat down and I was just like blown away by what they were saying. Because they weren't talking about drinking, they were talking about thinking. and all the problems they were experiencing and all the things that were going around in my head that I'd never heard another man say. And I thought I was just unique. And when I walked into that room, I wasn't unique. I was no longer like a freak in my head, like who couldn't control himself. I was like, I had a problem like these guys, and these guys had recovered. And I was like, wow, like, tell me how. And that was
This is possible.
This is possible. And that was the beginning of my journey of like recovery in so many areas of my life, like, you know. And I guess where I'm going with this is like, also think about who you're going to confide in and why. And
yes.
It's not so much who you feel comfortable with. And sometimes I would say like, well, why don't, like, I would feel uncomfortable talking to another guy, whereas nowadays I don't. I'm better. I still have my moments, don't get me wrong. I really sometimes struggle, like, depending upon how I'm thinking, you know. And I'd be more
Sam,
tempted
I like the phrase. I feel it's quite relevant. Sometimes you need to. There's a difference between kind of what you need to hear and what you want to hear.
Yeah.
And what we're really talking about is you need to connect with people, whether that's a coach or mentor, whether that's, I love the word you used, tribe, and you sort of said, I've got like this community around me, whether it's a mentor in Chris, let's say, or you've got Bobby around the vision stuff, or you've got a coach or someone around addiction. You've got this tribe around you, and you need those people to tell you what you need to hear.
Correct.
Not what you want to hear.
I need honesty.
And that's why it's challenging. But it often, there's quite a lot of people I work with, and I kind of tell them what they need to hear. Because if I'm honest, I used to care too much about what people thought. I used to be a bit of a people pleaser and used to like, I don't know, recognition, because I never got recognition growing up from my parents. And so I was always trying to prove some stuff. And I've only understood this properly in the last 4 to 5 years. But now I've realized that you actually, you're actually more respected when you tell people what they need to hear.
Yeah.
And you need to say what you think. Don't sit on it. And you do that, and it's uncomfortable to start with, but you just grow. That's how you grow personally, and it comes from within. Like you grow internally, and then everything externally happens. You become a better financial planner. You become a better dad. But it's about the personal growth that you've been through and I've been through, and so on. So yeah,
it's the courage. You need the courage to say something, but you also need the compassion and kindness in how you deliver it. And if you can then wrap that up with a story that's relatable because you've experienced it, then the person will identify that you've gone through what they're going through, which then makes them feel comfortable. And then you hit them with the hard truths. It's not like bang straight away and without any kind of empathy or understanding or emotional intelligence. You need to build a little relationship with them first of all, make somebody feel comfortable, bring their guard down. Because as soon as their guard is actually down and they feel like they're not alone and what they're thinking in their head is no longer stupid or silly or weak, right, or shameful or guilty because somebody else has experienced it, all of a sudden their neurological pathways are open to be reconditioned and changed. Yes, and that's the beautiful thing. And I've seen it happen time and time again. I've seen it happen with people that I work with. And I love it. I actually love doing it. I really enjoy it. So there we go. So look, today was just about kind of really introducing you to my network, Tony, because I think you're doing fantastic work. I've obviously been on your live LinkedIn as well, and we talked a lot, didn't we, on there? But I think it's really important that we don't, Financial Planner Life has always been also a channel where we talk about getting better in multiple ways. Whether that's through mental health, whether that's through better business performance, whether that's being a better father or whatever, a better role model, or a better mentor, because these are all the fundamentals of life that can give us grounding and purpose. And for me, I have to do it. Like this right now was nice for me. Like I enjoyed it because I don't open up as much as I used to, I don't think, because I'm over in Dubai. It's a different world over here. It's not as, it might look brilliant from the outside, but it's work, and it can feel a lonely place, especially when you've just moved here. So like for me, getting a bit vulnerable and honest and opening up and saying like, sometimes life's not perfect and you don't feel great, but when you build a network of people that are highly skilled and are there for you and can hit you with that truth and honesty and have most importantly, the experience to be able to do so, right? Then, shit gets better, right?
It does. I've enjoyed it too. Always good chatting, and And look, it's the important stuff. It's the stuff we don't always talk about, but it's the stuff that actually matters, isn't it? It makes life
Yeah.
more fun. And yeah, I've really enjoyed it.
Takes the stress out of life, man, when you let it out. It lets let off a little bit of steam every now and then. And I hope anybody listening to this might go, do you know what? I need to let off a bit of steam. Or do you know what? I want to go to the next level, so I'm going to speak to a performance person. Or do you know what? I feel like shit, and maybe I should go and speak to Talk Club, the men's mental fitness charity, or lean into a counsellor before I become the best version of myself. Because you've got to start somewhere. You can't become the best version of yourself if you feel like shit. You need to stop feeling like shit, first of all, understand why you feel like shit, and then rebuild yourself. And that's the bit that I believe is true, right? And then you're part of that journey. You're part of that journey once somebody's taken the time to fix themselves, and then it's about how can we take you further. Yeah? I think I get it now.
Definitely.
Good man.
Yeah.
All right.
Top man.
Tony, top man, thanks so much for your time today, and look forward to talking to you again.
Sounds good.
Cheers.